Me a lot of something. Have you guys ever heard of the servant girl Annihilator?
Whoa!
Man,
what?
I wish I opened for them.
Oh, I would have.
I would love to open for those guys. Yeah, we
it.
tried to go on the tour, but they wouldn't. They said that we weren't badass enough.
Yeah,
So Mandaddy has. I have not.
well, I mean, at first I thought it was a ministry song, but
Are you kidding me?
no, I really did. But I did a little research on this. If you've never heard about this, this is really fascinating. It's perhaps the first serial killer in American history, perhaps recorded in American history, or perhaps even in the world.
So you're saying that the first serial killer in recorded history might have been American?
Yes.
So we're number one?
USA! 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 Dumb!
I just want to say, can we get off of these snakes first and just go on to that little high bridge right there?
Yeah. Let's
okay.
get away from that axe. Let's get away from that
move.
thing.
I've been walking in reverse the whole time, so thank you.
I'm still like, it feels like I'm wearing snake skates.
That's kind of fun, though. Or like when you're at the airport and you can do that quick
I'm a fan.
Yeah, it's like the little
Speed
conveyor
walkway.
belt. That's
Yeah.
it. They're just
nice.
taking me where they want to go.
magic carpet ride.
I'm digging it.
Very helpful.
So the servant girl Annihilator, this is perhaps the first recorded serial killer in history. Yeah,
Serial kisser?
Serial kisser is
All right.
This is 3 years prior to Jack the Ripper and 9 years before H.H. Holmes set up shop at the Chicago World's
So
Fair.
this is before Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
Whoa.
The murders, they take place over the course of 1 year, a single year, from late 1884 to 1885 in Austin, Texas, which was the capital at the time. Isn't it still the capital? What's
Yeah,
the
it is
capital?
now, yeah,
It is.
Austin.
All right, yeah. Anyway.
Better ask them, buddy boy.
So the killer's list of victims, it topped out at 8 people. There were 7 women, and this becomes sort of a thing, so that you know. 5 of them were black, 2 were white, and there was 1 black man. In addition to those murdered, 6 women and 2 men were brutally injured. So this is still only 20 years after
So
the
there are
end.
survivors?
Well, there were incidental victims, not necessarily the target, but people who were injured, perhaps.
You got in the way, man.
Exactly. I'm not kidding. Exactly. That's exactly what happened. So this is basically 20 years after the Civil War ended, and Reconstruction is still very fresh in the minds of the citizens of the capital city. But Austin is a very, very quickly growing city. It has 3 colleges. There's a new Capitol building being constructed. It's extremely progressive too. So there's multitudes of freemen who live and work alongside whites, that is, former slaves, who are freedmen that are, I guess, cohabitating as part of the middle class, so doing quite well for themselves. That does not mean, though, that there was not a lot of racial tension, sort of an undercurrent of violence and vice throughout the city.
Yeah, wasn't the Reconstructionist era in the South was like 1873, right?
It, was
when
from
Rutherford B. Hayes was elected, or he enacted some kind of law.
It was 1865 to 1877, so like Johnson, I think, was at the same time period. So leading up to the initial murder of Molly Smith on December 30th, 1884, there is a spree of home invasions during the summer and fall, and these invasions usually included some kind of assault on the serving women of these houses, and typically most of these women were African American. The first victim, Molly Smith, she was a young cook living with her boyfriend off of Pecan Street. However,
Pecan?
Depends on if it's like a pie or just...
Or on the tree.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Texas.
Right. So she was 25 years old at the time, and she was attacked in her bed and dragged from her house out into the snow. There was, quote, a horrible hole in the side of her head. She had been stabbed multiple times all over her body, chest, abdomen, and extremities. The body was soaking in a ghastly pool of her own blood, and it said that it looked like it had been floating there. So the wound from the side of her head was definitely made with a sharp, blunt, well, not sharp and blunt, sharp
blunt
instrument.
object.
A heavy, sharp
A razor
instrument.
sharp bowling
Most people
ball.
think that it was probably a hatchet. So inside the house, an axe was left beside the bed. And
Yeah, we can put those sound effects in.
It's true. And a bloody trail stained the floor, leading out of the bedroom into the yard. Walter Spencer, the boyfriend, he struggled with the man apparently and was knocked unconscious before he could actually identify who it was. He was arrested, but tried over 2 days and eventually acquitted because there was no evidence. Yes, the boyfriend.
Okay.
Now, 5 months pass between the next murder. This was May 7th, 1885. The MO and the brutality of the violence of this crime seemed to match the first case, that of Molly Smith. So this second victim, her name was Eliza Shelley. She was another young African-American cook. She was employed by a state legislator, and she lived in quarters towards the back of the house. The killer broke into the house again and went in through the bedroom window where she and her two young children, who were aged 6 years and 6 months, they slept inside.
Wow.
So young children, they witnessed the murder, but the one being 6-month-old could not obviously communicate to the police, and the 6-year-old was too traumatized by the event to be of any use.
Oh,
Wrecked.
no.
Wrecked. Destroyed. But they were, other than that, unharmed. So Shelley's body was left on the floor of the room in a bloody heap. It was posed, and above her right eye, there was a massive gash from a sharp instrument of some kind delivered with such force that the woman's head was nearly split in two.
Wow.
This time, only 2 weeks pass before the murderer strikes again. So May 22nd, 1885.
They always seem to accelerate.
Yep.
That's a common thing where they just and they try to perfect.
Well, this is what
It's
makes
that
this
ego,
case
too.
a little unique, is that there's spurts of activity and then periods of silence. So he's rather unpredictable. The victim in this particular crime was, again, fitting the profile, a young African-American servant girl. Her body was found, and the name was Irene Cross. She's attacked with a knife and stabbed multiple times in the room that she let with her young nephew.
Oh.
A reporter noted that it appeared that she had been scalped as well.
Wow. Went old school.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was right after the end of the Indian Wars, so that's still pretty prevalent in the culture.
Yeah.
In a letter dated May of 1885, around this time, the famed author, O. Henry, he coins the killer's nickname.
Oh, Gift of the Magi.
Was it the Gift of the Magi?
Yep.
Didn't he also do the Curse of the Red Chief about
He did
the
one-
kidnapping of the boy and the two criminals, and it was a comedy?
Yeah, he did one like the triangle of people or whatever, where like each person yearns for another person.
Right.
Like the M. Night Shyamalan of the 19th century.
Yeah, love twists.
What's a twist?
Yep.
Well, he actually lived in Austin at the time under his real name. And he wrote in a letter to his friend Dave Hall, quote, the town is fearfully dull, except for the frequent raids of the servant girl annihilators, who make things lively during the dead hours of the night, end quote. And so...
Oh, wow.
Girl Annihilators, man. That's intense.
Pretty intense. Yeah.
Intense.
So August 30th, 1885. There's been a gap of time now.
Yeah, from May and then a 2-week break and then August.
Yes.
That's
At the
a
end of
long
August.
time.
August 30th. So almost 2 months have passed. Or 2.5 months. A servant woman by the name of Rebecca Ramey. She is savagely beaten unconscious.
What was her race?
She was also African American. The first 6 victims of this killer were African American.
Of 8?
Of 8. So the servant, Rebecca Ramey, again, the killer breaks into the house, savagely beats this woman unconscious, seriously wounding her, and then this is horrible.
Ooh.
He grabs her 11-year-old daughter, Mary, who was in another room. She was dragged from the house to a backyard wash house, where she was raped, beaten around the head, and then eventually killed by being stabbed through her right ear with some sort of long iron rod.
Oh, my
Wow.
God.
Jeez.
Way killed.
That's an
That's going to
important-
make a lot of people uncomfortable.
This is actually an important detail.
And this is why I can't do Gilles de Rais.
Well, there's a pattern in this killer. So this actually comes up again later on with another victim. So the next victims were a couple. It was Gracie Vance and her boyfriend, Orange Washington. Now, this is the first time that the killer has murdered a man. They were attacked as they were sleeping inside a shanty outside of their employer's house on the night of September 28th. Both were beaten to death. Washington was killed first. His body was found in the shanty. He had been bludgeoned in the head. And then the killer must have carried Vance to a stable on the property where she was raped and her body was found. The beating she received was so animalistic in nature that the Austin Daily Statesman paper described her death as her head almost beaten into a jelly, end quote.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Now, the final 2 murders, they happened on the same night, months later, and that night was December 24th, 1885, Christmas Eve. The murders occur in 2 different locations, and only the investigators have concluded about an hour apart.
So this person is completely unhinged now. This person
They're definitely
is
escalating, and
the ego aspect of the serial killer, which is often unchecked, is now saying, Come on, kill, satisfy, do it.
Right.
It makes you feel good. Do it.
But going about their normal life as well.
Obeying
that's
this
always
compulsion.
the thing. Is like that's a side you never get to know about because just like just walk around. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing great. I mean, it's just crazy to think about that mindset being in a person that you just might be talking to.
It's crazy.
So the first victim's body, that of Sue Hancock, she was apparently a lady of refinement and part of society's upper crust.
Oh.
She
What does that even mean?
What, upper crust? Oh.
Like not us.
I know upper crust, but like a lady of refinement.
Well, it was just
okay, Angela,
It was a rich
Angela would
woman
be a
in
lady of
Boston.
refinement.
Oh, well, thank you.
For sure.
That's sweet.
This is where the
And
case
so
gets,
would Fritz.
Thank you.
the case gets,
Thought you never
Agreed.
asked.
gets different at this point because she was a rich,
She was rich.
white woman.
Okay.
This is the first white victim.
Dun, dun,
Yes.
dun.
Dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun. So, her body is discovered by her husband in the backyard of their house, and her head had been cleft in two with an axe. And upon further examination, it was discovered that a sharp, thin object had been inserted into her ear canal, piercing her brain.
So those
Before
are the
or
two
after?
linking deaths.
There was no way for them to tell if it was before or after.
Gotta wonder.
I know.
That's really horrific.
I mean,
Hey,
it
which
was-
one is more horrific though? Is it the
both
piercing the
pretty-
brain and then cleaving, or the cleaving and then going like, well, since she's already dead, might as well?
Well, it
pretty
was
bad.
extremely rudimentary detective procedures during this time. Basically, they were relying on bloodhounds. There was no fingerprinting. There was no DNA. They would just, when they found a scent, there was actually a lot of bloody footprints, bare footprints left at some of the crime scenes, which comes up later in trials. But other than that, they had dogs, and they would just chase people around.
The split head or the instrument through the eardrum, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Both are going to suck.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, both are awful.
Wouldn't want either one.
The
But I was
chick-
just thinking more of the mindset of the person.
Oh,
because,
God.
like, it could be a torture and then doesn't kill and then they kill, or did they, like, kill him and then go, but I still like doing this. I gotta finish up. I gotta finish doing what I'm doing. It's just me being me.
Really wonder what. Yeah. Express yourself. So obviously, the entire length of this year while this is going on, the public is getting whipped into a fervor. They're demanding that the police do something, that they catch this killer, to the extent that by the time that these last two murders occur, people are suggesting that they ring, when a body is found, fire alarms, and everyone would rush into the street and start searching around for the killer, or vigilante committees were formed. So basically, just authorized by the government, vigilantes pouring over the street, interrogating strangers, people they didn't recognize from the community.
What could go wrong?
It's like the opposite of a police state.
Yeah.
It's anarchy.
And this brings us to the final victim that was discovered that night. 17-year-old Eula Phillips. She was a beautiful young woman. She was also white, and she was from one of the wealthiest families in all of Austin. Her naked body was found behind her father-in-law's house in an unlit alley. She had been in bed with her husband, Jimmy, and their young son. Jimmy had been attacked as well, and he was found by the police on the brink of unconsciousness with a deep, deep gash, deep laceration on the back of his head, blood everywhere. Their son was in the bed as well, holding an apple when they discovered him, and he was unharmed.
At least he had a snack.
Yeah, I guess he was hungry. Police followed a blood trail from the bedroom to the alley, discovering the body. She had been raped as well, and wooden timbers had been placed on her arms, pinning her down. And of course, the death blow was dealt by that of an axe to the head, bashing the skull in.
Jesus.
This is according to the Fort Worth Gazette of the time. It reported that Eula was on her back, her face, quote, turned upward in the dim moonlight with an expression of agony that death itself had not erased from the features, end quote.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's a hell of a write-up.
That is.
So they found the killer? Is this guy's locked away now? He's dead?
He's probably dead, yeah.
Oh, thank God.
By now, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
Probably.
I mean, shit.
Probably. I mean,
Yeah, you don't know.
anything's possible.
Actually, they never, ever found the killer. There's many, many theories. Over 400 people were arrested by the police.
Are you kidding me? Any notable ones? Like,
The husbands of the last two victims, James Phillips, was tried. And then,
Whoa,
he
dude.
was tried.
Dude,
but
did
was
you just got
eventually,
bit by
He's
a
got bit by a
Dude,
big ass
Oh
snake.
my
man.
God, that's not
fine.
good.
Was that the Viper?
Guys,
Was that the Felix?
I'm fine.
They're-
Afro
I'm fine. Just
Sentius?
It looked like it had an afro and a mustache. It probably
Guys, you're overreacting. You're overreacting.
All right.
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
maybe.
Oh, you got bit by the rare one, dude.
Sometimes they don't really put the venom in you. They just
Just a play bite.
How big was it?
Let me just look. I'll suck it out.
That was like a good 8 feet. I mean, that thing's... You're just sucking out your own venom.
Yeah.
I'm fine. So
You
anyways,
are really
look, this is the
flexible.
really
Oh, man.
interesting thing is that there are theories that this killer
That was impressive.
might have actually been Jack the Ripper.
Wait, rewind that. Rewind.
wait.
Bring it back.
Come on.
You're
Come on,
fine.
Finish your
together.
story.
No,
Take it
it's-
off.
Give me that trill.
That was not Jack the Ripper.
Okay, good.
Of course it wasn't.
Okay, so all right, that's good.
But still,
Was it Jack the Ripper?
Yeah.
no, it was not Jack the Ripper. Holy cow! Wow.
Son of a bitch.
And the
piano trill. God.
Oh.